Hey guys, it's Everton fan 77 here today, and pretty much what happened this morning, I woke up to check the FIFA.com website like I normally do, and then to my disappointment, I saw on the right hand side, Australia had actually lost 2-1 to El Salvador in the Under-20s World Cup. Now you may be thinking, why are you so disappointed about that? Under-20s World Cup doesn't really count for too much, it's not that important. But it pretty much is a good indicator of what our next generation of football players could be like. It's not 100% accurate, but you can get a rough idea of what the Australian team will look like. And really, it was quite disappointing to see the under-20s lose to El Salvador. Now, all credit to El Salvador for getting the win. Fantastic to see them get a win, even if it was against Australia. But nevertheless, Australia should not be losing to El Salvador at any age level of the game. So this kind of led me to a bit of a conclusion, went on a bit of investigation, and I've come to the conclusion that one of the main factors is Asian football and the money invested in that. Now, I'm not trying to pick on Asian football or anything, but I think the money invested into that is kind of making some other teams suffer. I'm going to use my own country as Australia as an example for that, and that's pretty much what I'll be talking about in today's video. So, first of all, I'm just going to list a few facts. Basically, I'm not trying to make it sound like a lawsuit or anything. I'm not going like a lawyer. I just want to get my point clear. And yeah, basically, I'll talk about it. So, I'll just start off with some facts to point out, I don't know, a bit of difference between the Australian squad and from now in the Australian squad from the 2006 World Cup, which was without doubt our best ever year in world football. So, first of all, our squad today has 8 out of 26 players in the... Well, the squad as well, I need to mention this, is it's not entirely an accurate squad. It's just a rough estimation of the 26 players which should be listed in the squad. And I've just kind of used this one, the one on Wikipedia, as an example because it is too hard to find. Because every website would list a different squad if you had to pick 26 players for your squad. And I've just used the one off Wikipedia for an example, so you can check that just to make sure these facts are right. But 8 out of 26 players from Australia play in Europe. Now, from the 2006 World Cup squad, the 23-man squad to play in the FIFA 2006 World Cup, 20 out of those 23 players played in the World Cup. 8 out of 26 players now, 20 out of 23 back in 2006 FIFA World Cup. Which squad would you say is better now? Of course, the 2006 FIFA World Cup squad. Back then, we had 11 players who played EPL football at the pinnacle of world football, and then you had some leagues which are arguably just as equally good as the Premier League. I didn't word that well, but you have 2 players who played for Serie A, Marco Bresciano and Zeljo Kalac. Then you had John Aloisi playing in La Liga for Deportivo Alaves. And 14 players that played at the pinnacle of Europe. How many do we have that play at the pinnacle of Europe now? I don't know, like players who played at that level in the Premier League. There's not too many starters, Australian starters in the Premier League nowadays. And then in Serie A, you have Mitchell Langrak who plays for Dortmund, but he's a reserve player. So really, at the pinnacle of world football, Australia is absent as far as individual players go. And back in our prime, in Australia's prime footballing days, you had Harry Kewell, Mark Viduka, Tim Cahill, and then tons of others who played for EPL clubs. Then we had Zeljo Kalac who played for AC Milan, even if he was a reserve to Dida. And then we had Bresciano and John Aloisi who played in Serie A and La Liga. So if you look at that squad, it is such a brilliant squad compared to what it is now. Now, where has our next generation of talent gone? We should be producing the same amount. You would think that the World Cup would inspire a next generation of football players, and it hasn't. Why is that? Because our young players are going to Asia because of the money. Not everyone, of course, but if you look at all the successful Australian players, they started off playing in Europe at a young age. A few of them moved from the NSL to the Premier League or to whatever European league they play in, but also a lot of them started in European academies as well. But either way, both of those, both types went to Europe at a young age, and really they've developed over time into better players. Now, we've got our young players going to Asia right now for the money. The youth development system, I'm not trying to sound like discriminative to the Asian football, but really the youth development in Asia is not as good as the quality of youth development you'd get in Europe. And with our young players going there for money, it's kind of disappointing to see that they're not going to develop quite as well as what they would in Europe. And consequently, they actually struggle to get a move to Europe, or they'd have to play outstanding football to get a move to Europe because they're not going to develop into as good players as what they would if they went to Europe. And then basically they just lie low in an Asian league, which is still competitive, don't get me wrong, but when you go to Europe, it is the pinnacle of world football. That is where you would develop the most, and it's quite disappointing to see some of our players just go to Asia, and I know it's very disappointing to see that players have chosen money over a successful career in world football, and the Australian squad has definitely suffered because of it. Like, when you look at the squad now, our star players are the same ones in the 2006 World Cup squad. You have 33-year-old Tim Cahill. I think it's 36-year-old Lucas Neal. Mark Schwarzer, who's like, I think he's hit 40 now, who's still our star players from the in our World Cup team, well, their potential World Cup team. By then, Cahill will be 34, Schwarzer would be 41, Neal would be 37. I mean, if those are your star players in your team, that you've got a bit of a problem with your next generation of football players. Okay, I'm just going to list some other teams, for example. England, who are their best players? Wayne Rooney, Joe Hart, maybe Jack Wilshere when he's fully fit. How old are they? 27, 25. I think Jack Wilshere's 21. When you look at that, they're at the peak of their careers, as they should be, and their best players are because they're at the peak of their careers. Brazil as well. Neymar, 21 as well, I think. I could go on for heaps of other nations, but Australia's best players are way too old, and it is very disappointing to see our generation of youth players not living up. We do have some good young talent when you think about probably our best. We have three good promising prospects for Australia. We have Tommy Rogic, Tommy Orr, and Robbie Cruz. Where do they play? Europe. Really, it's quite simple. I think I've made my point clear here, but all the good players Australia produced have come through Europe, and the players which are going to Asia are kind of our mid-range Australian team, and it's really made Australia suffer because of it. We just scraped through that group. Now, it isn't an easy group, don't get me wrong. We did quite well to get through the group, but I think Australia's lowered their expectations now. Back in 2006, after reaching the second round of the World Cup, we would have expected to be topping our group. Of course, we have Japan, who's become world footballing power now, but we really would have expected to have done much better in our group than what we did. We wouldn't be hugely satisfied with qualifying for the World Cup. We celebrated almost like we'd won the World Cup, and I thought it was a huge warning sign for as well. Like I'm really not wording this well here, but I think Australia as a whole just would take getting to the World Cup, would take getting to the group stage, and just be satisfied with that, which we really should be. We should be looking at getting out of the group stage, contending for quarterfinals, semi-finals. It might sound very ambitious, but that's what we should be aiming to do, and it's what our young players should be aiming to do. They should be aiming to reach the World Cup squad, not going to Asia for money. And you look at the squad now, our good young players are only playing in Europe, and yeah, I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be discriminative to any region of world football, but I think Asia and the money invested is really starting to ruin world football, but kind of take a bit away. If Asia was to get as good as Europe, it would take an extremely long while. I'm talking maybe 2060, 2070 for them to be as powerful in world football as Europe are. And it's kind of shown as well in our national games, in our national friendlies. We've been losing to teams like Romania and Scotland. Back in 2006, it would have been a horrible loss to lose to those two teams. Maybe not so much Scotland, but losing to teams like Romania and Scotland in recent times has just been really disappointing. And they're both European teams as well. They played at a consistent level, and they've been brought up with the high standard of world football. And our whole Australian team, well, not our whole Australian team, the young to middle-aged players have just been brought up with Asian football. The majority of those players have been brought up with Asian football, which is not at the same level as European football. Now, I think I've made my point very clear here. I've just had to ramble on about Asian football. I'm not trying to sound discriminative, as I said before, but I think for Australian football fans as a whole, we really just want to see a change in the next generation of football players, seeing our young talents go over to Europe instead, and it would just produce a better generation of football players. Now, I have ranted on, if you're not really interested in Australian football, this might have seemed a bit boring because it's kind of unfamiliar talk, but as I've said before, I'm not trying to sound discriminative to any region, but Europe over Asia is the key to Australian success. And yeah, that's pretty much the video. I kind of haven't really made that much of a point, or have, but I kind of rambled on about absolutely nothing, and I'm still doing that now. So this has been Everton Fan 77. I hope you liked today's video. If you did, please leave a like. And also, don't forget to leave your opinions on the matter. See ya.